Oh, man. Thank you, Pastor Alex, for this opportunity and kind of seeing something in us and kicking us out of the nest because I was definitely probably the most hesitant to get up here. And if I could have seen your faces, like kind of guessing who was it going to be this week, because you're like, they're out of pastors. Who else is going to speak? Like, man, if I could have seen the Vegas like betting odds, I would have loved to have seen it of who the guest was. And honestly, man, I could have just set the mic down. We already got a great word from Tavis today. Congratulations, man. Just coming up here and killing it. I think that's the most I've heard you say ever. Oh, man. So thank you. My name is Jesse Turner. Like you said, I'm the guest experience director here. So that's why I love to talk to people. You may see me leading worship over here on the drums. I work as a college access counselor by day and most nights at a local high school. And then certainly last but most is I'm a father of two. And I know most of the time people like force you to see pictures of their really adorable kids, but I'm not gonna do that unless we just happen to have, oh, just kidding, roll that beautiful bean footage. There's Ella. She is 3, and I got one more. That's Nolan. He's 6. Pride and joy, mini-me's, and obvious handfuls. Definitely a ham. So I just want to say this before we get started. Some of the best sermons that I've ever seen, some of the best sermons I've ever gotten stuff from, some of the best things that I've heard are from people that went through a fire to bring me that message. Somebody that went through something that didn't sound like theoretically great on paper, so they just thought, this is beautiful, I'm going to say it on Sunday. No, like they went through something to bring that. And then another thing that I love about some of the best sermons I've heard is they've said the phrase something like, if I only had one message left to give, if I could only speak one time, if I could only pick one message to give to you ever, this is the most important thing that I could give you. And that's why I thank you for the opportunity, because this is that for me. I had a few things written. I had a few things that I thought would be like really great to say, a few sermons that would come across really well, but none of them spoke to me like this one did. I was like, none of them were like so important that I had to use the one opportunity to give this to you. So that's kind of where we're at today. And I'll give you a little context of the verses that we're in, a little bit of context of where we're at in the Bible, because we're in 2 Kings today. We'll start in chapter 6. We'll roll from 13 on to about 17 if you're a note taker and you just want to like preemptively take the notes of where we're at. But where we're at here is the prophet Elisha and his servant are hanging out, and the king of Aram has told his troops to go find Elisha. And why? Because Elisha has been telling the king of Israel where the king of Aram's troops are hiding, waiting to ambush them. Obviously, king of Aram's not super pumped about that, and that's kind of where we pick up. Go and find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back. He's in Dothan, which I hope I pronounced correctly. Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh no, my Lord, what shall we do? He's probably sounded more dramatic than that, but that's what the servant asked. What are we going to do? Do not be afraid, the prophet answered. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So I want you to take a moment, turn to your neighbor, and give them my title as nervously as the servant asks, and say, we're surrounded. That was good. I'm guest experience. I'm going to make you talk to each other. That's like my favorite part. And you guys had an extra hour of sleep, so we might like talk a little more later. We'll see where we get to. But when I read scripture, I like to relate to somebody in the scripture. I like to kind of put myself in the shoes of somebody there. Kind of helps me kind of pull practical things that I can learn from it. Kind of helps me understand the story. And I feel like you could probably guess the easiest person for me to identify with in this story is the servant, because he just woke up one morning. It says woke up early. That's not really me. But, differences in text. He woke up early, went outside, saw that they're surrounded, and just freaked out. Totally get that. Because this is common throughout the Old Testament. God will do really great things for Israel. He'll pull them up from what should have been a loss to like a dramatic come from behind victory, or just an astounding victory that should have never happened. But you like turn the next page of the Old Testament, and hundreds of years could have passed, but you could just be turning one page, and all of a sudden Israel's forgotten everything when the next thing comes around, and they're like, what are we gonna do? This has never happened before. We've seen God do great things, but is he going to do it now? I get that. I totally understand, because when you're faced with something right in front of you, sometimes you're not thinking past or future. You're just like, I'm surrounded and going to die right now. I get that. So I'm right there with the servant in the situation. And what I really love is how Elisha just rolls out of bed, walks outside with him. He's like, what are we going to do? And Elisha's like, don't worry. And I'm like, I don't know if you realize it. I'm worried because we're surrounded. And he's like, don't worry. There's more of us than there are of them. And I would have thought he was nuts. Like, there's 2 of us. Can you count? There's a lot of chariots. Chariots are kind of like tanks back then. I mean, a chariot can run a lot faster than a person. So he meets his servant's terror with just pure assurance. He's like, it's okay. Don't be worried. There's more of us. And what he does in that moment is he doesn't fix the problem for the servant. Because a couple chapters earlier, Elisha takes care of some people. Like, the servant really shouldn't have been worried, because 50 men tried to capture Elisha earlier, and Elisha just called to God and said, rain fire. And it happened twice. Like, not just once, but twice. And I don't know about you, but I don't think it would take much more heavenly gas to take out an army than what it did 50 men. Like, if he can do one, he could probably do the other. The servant's not really thinking about that, though. He's just freaking out at what's in front of him. And Elisha doesn't fix that problem for him. And that's what I wanted to read out of the text. I really wanted to see him just like fix it, because I'm a fixer sometimes. I'll take on other people's problems of my own. I want to see them suffer. I want to give them help. And I'm just like, just fix it for them. Just roast them. Do something. But it doesn't happen. He helps his servant help himself. He helps his servant help himself through God. He says, God, just open his eyes to see what's already around him. And when he opens his eyes to what's already around him, he realizes they were never alone at all. They were completely surrounded by God's forces. There's a reason why that army hadn't crossed into the city and just burned them down and taken them down. There's a reason they were still there. It's because it wasn't safe for them. They were protected. And that's who you kind of want around you. Somebody like Elisha to just say, don't worry. To meet that panic with calm reassurance. You're like, no, we're gonna get through this. And in reading that, it just screamed the question at me, who are we surrounding ourselves with? Who is around us that's gonna pray for us in that moment, to pray for our eyes be open, instead of meeting our terror with terror and our anger with anger? Who's gonna just walk in and say, no, it's okay. God can work through this. You can get through this. This is not the end. Because see, we have an unwritten rule at work. I don't know if I told you where I work. I'm a college access counselor by day and most nights, and that means I don't get to wear my cool jeans. I got to wear my professional pants and have a collar and meet with kids and help them with their future. Okay, that's what I do during the day. But we have this unwritten rule at work that it just is amazing. If one person is upset or angry or just outraged or see something that's bad and we've got to fix it, if one coworker is upset, the other coworker that's talking to them can't be upset with them. There is a mandatory calm person protocol that we've put in place. Because here's the deal. You may know this from past experience. 2 angry people, they're not getting much done. 2 irrational people that are just fired up and yelling at people. I had not say cursing out. I feel like that's probably not appropriate. But they're yelling at people like, fighting with fire. They're not going to get much done. But if there's a calm person meeting them to say, I'm listening, I understand where you're angry at, or I understand where we need to fix this. Let's look at our actual options to get things done. An amazing rule to have. And that's what I needed to know that I had in normal day life too, not just at work, because I adopted that rule at home too. Like if one person's angry, the other person can't be angry too. We've got to have that balance. And to even back up a little bit from there, you've got to realize we weren't made to do this part alone. You notice there's always another person in this story. Elisha had the servant had Elisha. We were made for relationship. And sometimes when I say relationship, people just think romantic relationship. No, we were made for companionship too. We were made to surround ourselves each other with good friends that are actually there for each other. It's examples all throughout the Bible. And one of my favorite examples is from Solomon. King Solomon is a little bit further in Israel's history. King Solomon is known as the wise king. His dad was King David, the man after God's own heart. And I guess if you can't be the man after God's own heart, the wise king's probably a pretty solid backup nickname to have. But he says in Ecclesiastes, let me get to my notes. Ecclesiastes 4. We're going to start probably in verse 9. I say probably because I know where my notes say that we start. 2 people are better off than 1. That's pretty simple, pretty easy to kind of get, but why? For they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But if someone who falls alone, they're in real trouble. And you skip on down to 12, it says, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. It goes on to say 3 or even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And I picked that because it's super practical. It just lets you know, like in a practical standpoint, why having 2 people is better than 1, why having 3 is even better. But I picked that too because a few doors down, my kids are learning that exact verse for their memory verse. The step 1, 2 people are better off than 1, for they can help each other succeed. They're learning that down there. Do you know what their series is called? It's amazingly painted on the window. It's Game Changer. And I know with kids, it's really fun to put that with sports, because that's the game and it changes the game. But that is a game changer for kids, to realize that we train them to be independent, but they weren't meant to be completely independently alone. They've got to have people surrounding them. They've got to have help. They've got to put their backs to backs and conquer what's in front of them. And what they're also learning is that it's not just a one-way street with being surrounded by people. You can't take, and never give. It has to go both ways. And that just screams a question to me, am I someone who I would want to surround myself with? Am I someone, at first I'm asking, who am I surrounding myself with? But then I kind of loop it back around. The people that I'm surrounding myself with, am I someone that's good for them? Am I someone that's bringing them up? Am I someone that's praying for them the way that I should? Not like Facebook prayers, praying. Prayer emoji, praying. No, that's actually taking the step and putting actions with the words to say, when I say, I've got your back, I mean it. There's actions behind it. Paul even writes in 1 Corinthians 15:33, he said, don't be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. It's a simple question. That's right, simple question. If I'm standing on a chair and you're standing on the floor, and I know you've been asked this before, if I'm standing on a chair and you're standing on the floor and we grab hands and start to pull, are you pulling me off the chair or am I pulling you up on the chair? Which is gonna happen? I'm probably gonna be on the floor, probably pretty easily, because I don't have balance. So that's something to think about when you're working out your circle of who is good for you, who is meeting your panic with calm. Turn that around on yourself. Are you meeting people's panic with calm? Are you a reassuring force that they need to be around? Or are you somebody that when they go through something, they kind of avoid you because they know, man, they're going to gas me up to do something really bad. When we get together, drama happens. Drama. Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're giving off? And this is something I learned trial by fire. This is like a trial by combat lesson that I had to learn. This is not something cute and theoretical that I saw, because I can pinpoint the darkest moment that I needed to be surrounded by people, that I needed people to lift me up in this. And it comes at a time that I didn't really think that bad things would really happen, because at this time of my life, I was serving at a church, and I'll give you a spoiler alert, it was this one. And I'm leading worship at the drums. And by that, I mean, I was learning to not just be a drummer and just play music. I was learning to actually lead worship through that, to know that it starts with me and then echoes out to you guys, and we all lead worship together. I was learning that process, and it was just changing how I viewed all that. I was also getting faithful in tithing, which I've seen so many miracles from that. I keep getting close to this cord, I know. I keep seeing miracles, and that I can point back to tithing. That I know we did a sermon series on it, but I could have done 2 weeks of just stories of miracles I've seen from that. I mean, that's a whole thing in itself. And I was also getting surrounded by a group of guys in ministry, and we were just doing life together. And that sounds really formal and really Christianese, so let me break it down for you. We had a good group text. That's what that means. It's super simple. But that group text, thanks to technology, that group text was a way that we kept up. Oh man, we're gonna get it together. Kept up with each other's lives daily. Highs and lows, talk about the week, but also talk about scripture. We would all send this scripture plan and be hey, we're gonna read this, we're gonna talk about it. We'd be this is what we got from this, or we didn't really get anything from this. What in the world are they talking about? I even Googled it. I still don't really understand what that means. But it's a chance for us to grow in that. And it was awesome. I was like, man, like this is like life's going so awesome. So I didn't really think bad things could happen, which is obviously like the best time for bad things to happen because you're like not looking for it at all. And I can pinpoint this moment because it was a Saturday night. And I was driving back from Florida. And I wish I could say that it was something like cool, like a beach trip, but I wasn't coming back from a beach trip. I was coming back from dropping my wife off at an inpatient rehabilitation center for addiction. So I'm driving back, and I just feel like just really broken. Because I'm a planner, I kind of like to know what things are coming forward. I kind of like to know I have this awesome calendar that I can even assign, like if this event is Nolan related or if this event is Ella related, like I've got it, that's electronic. And at that moment, driving back home, I had no clue what was gonna happen. I had no comfort or security in what was about to happen after that month because I didn't know if my wife was coming home. I didn't know if she'd stay home. But here's the one thing that I knew for sure, that for the next 30 days, I was gonna be a single father. And I knew I couldn't do that because I showed you the picture. The 3-year-old was like 18 months old, and she's a handful. She's also a girl. There's a little extra sass that goes along with that. And I was outnumbered. I was like, there's 2 of them, there's 1 of me. Like, numbers don't add up. I'm not gonna be able to do this. Can't survive this. And then I start to really kind of dive into that bad mind train of like, what's about to happen? Because that's impossible for me to be a single father. That's impossible for me to show my kids what love looks like in a broken home. It's impossible for me to see joy again. It's impossible for me to move forward in that. And I roll back into town in the perfect time to join a worship team family night. And as you can imagine, that was the exact opposite. Every word of that sentence was the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. I didn't feel very worship. I didn't feel very team. I didn't feel very family. The only thing I liked about that sentence was night, because at least the day was over. And I think to myself, and I go, you know what though? You're gonna stop by. You're just gonna let them know you're back in town. And you're gonna say hi to everybody. And you're gonna go home. That's it. So I walk in, and they're praising. We've even made like a little circle of chairs, you know. It's a real kumbaya moment. You know, it's really special. If any other time it happened, it would have been really special. And I'm just super disconnected from it. I'm like, I'm gonna go. 3 songs into this, I'm gonna go, not feeling this. To be honest, I'm just really angry at God. And I don't feel like this is where you are when you're angry at God. Like you just kind of go home and you numb the pain, you feel the anger, and you kind of just go from there. And on my way out, I told him I was leaving, and one of the guys in my group text stopped me and said, hey, before you go, just let me pray for you. And I was like, sure. And he prayed for me, and that was really nice. It was what I needed at that moment, and I have no clue what he prayed about. It was the action of it itself that kind of showed me what was important at that time, but I wasn't really hanging on to words at that time because there weren't really words that were going to come from me at that time. But what he said next was really important. He said, I know you want to go, but why don't you just stay here and worship in that brokenness and just be around family that's gonna pray for you, that's gonna be here for you, it's gonna surround you, it's gonna lift you up. Like, we've got your back in this time. Like, don't go home alone. And that was huge because it then makes me shift in perspective. And it's just a tiny shift, but a tiny but very important shift. Because you know if you're in a boat on the ocean and you start to turn just a little bit, the courses will get much more different, right? And my course when I rolled up to that worship team family night was, how did I get here? It's impossible to get past this. What am I even gonna do? These kids are gonna be with me all the time. And that shift happened from that to all of a sudden, what's the purpose in this? Why am I going through? What am I supposed to do with this? But also, I can get through this. This is not impossible. I can show my kids what love is in a broken home. I can offer them comfort and security. I can move past this. And it's just that tiny shift as to how I even made it to the next day from that. Because some days I'm still just 6 minutes at a time. Whatever's in the next 6 minutes, I'm going to handle. But that enabled me to look to tomorrow and the next day and start to really kind of plan that out. Because, see, the end of that story is not like a good one. Like, it sounds really great, like, and the perspective change shift, but not everything was great that night, and not everything was better later on. In fact, the end of that story is my wife came home but did leave. I did become a single father. What worship team family night Jesse viewed as impossible, it happened. Like, how do you move forward from that? But because worship team family night Jesse changed that shift in perspective because of those around him, because they prayed for him and said, open your eyes. You're not alone in this. Because that was really what I was struggling with, was like, I'm gonna be alone in this. Now, I can't get through this. There were many nights that I took my kids and we loaded up and we just went to my parents' house to eat. Thankfully, they cooked enough food and kind of knew that I might be coming, but we went over there just so that I wasn't alone in the house and wasn't the sole source of strength in that house, because I didn't have it that day. There were times that when I didn't have the kids for a weekend that I would take on extra work projects. I would go to a friend's house and watch Netflix on their couch. That way I just wasn't watching Netflix on my own couch, because the deafening silence of that house was just getting to me because it was normally so loud. So loud that I have to have the subtitles on just to even process what's happening. And in this time, I was just hearing every creak of the house, hearing everything that happened. And I knew I couldn't do it. And it was those people, that circle of support that got around me and said, no, you can see this. You can see through this. That the most important thing that I have to tell you today, that if you ask me tomorrow, I say, what was your sermon about yesterday? Like, that looked cool. If I had to tell you my sermon in just one little sentence to take with you, it's that who you surround yourself with determines how you see life. It determines how you're gonna approach it. Because I could have easily found people that would have wallowed with me and been angry with me and just said, yeah, this is awful and you're never gonna make it through it. What are you gonna do? That's easy because those people are all around. But I had to get around people that told me, like, no, this is not impossible. You can get through this. They met my panic. They met my terror with assurance. And some of those people are my small group that I joined that are just full of moms. True story. If you look on our website, the small group's probably still called My Mommy and Me. And it started as a complete convenience. It did. I know that might hurt their feelings now, but I needed a place I could go and take the kids with me. Like, I had a great circle of support that would help me watch the kids, and I didn't mind at all asking them, saying, hey, I gotta work. Do you mind watching the kids? Hey, I gotta go practice and get ready to serve this weekend. Do you mind watching the kids? But small group was kind of hard because I was like, hey, like, this is just for me. This is some me time. Do you mind watching them? I know that you've watched them twice already, but it's like, I couldn't do it. And Mommy and Me, my kiddos and me is what we call it now, like almost like an inside joke. But Mommy and Me was kind of a place I could take them. But when I went, I was like, I'll give this a shot and we'll just see how it goes. Because, you know, I already got Ella and she's a girl. And if I surround myself with other girls, like, that's a lot of hormones. But when I got there, I learned so much that I didn't know, because Ella, God bless her soul, probably still has PTSD of how I did her hair for the first 6 months that it was just us. There's so many rules to girl hair that I had no idea about. I didn't own conditioner, and I think some of you just gasped. I didn't own a hair dryer. I learned that there's conditioner you use in the shower, and then there's conditioner that you can spray, and that's not dry shampoo. That's a different thing. That there's special brushes that you use for curly hair that will help you get through the tangles and the knots. But then also, you're not supposed to start at the top and work your way to the bottom with brushing hair. I know some of you are shaking your head like, oh, that poor girl. Oh, God. But I was thinking it was like a car wash where you, like, when you spray the top of the car and the water goes down. The logic is there, you can't deny it. Like, that's how I thought it was supposed to work. So I'm learning all these things, and I'm like, man, if I hadn't been with you guys, there is no telling how homeless we would look. But also, there's no telling where I would be, like, without your help, without you guys telling me that we can do this, and a place that my kids can go a few times a month, that they can kind of interact with other kids and eat dinner, because we eat dinner in our group, because, you know, food is holy. And we do a devotion with the kids, and then we do a devotion with ourselves. And this became really important, to surround myself more with those people. And you know, it's great to hear the end of that story and hear that I, like, made it. And hear that, like, oh, like, you guys are happy now, and that's awesome. And that just gave me the warm and fuzzies. So I'm gonna go home and go about my life. And that would be great. Like, it's great that I made it through. It's great that there was people surrounding me. And it's great that I can look back and say, like, I would not have made it if people hadn't surrounded me. But here's the thing. Just like my kids are learning a few doors down, that's a two-way street. And if I keep that all for me, I'm selfish with that. Then it was useless. And then I can't pour that into somebody else. Because there were people that surrounded me when I was going through this that went through similar situations that didn't want to learn the lesson they learned the hard way, that were pouring into me to say, hey, this is what helped me, and this is how I got through, and this is what you need to know moving forward. This is how to love your kids. This is how, things that they didn't want to learn the way that I learned and that they learned, but they were trying to help me out. And so that's why I love when people muster up the courage to talk to me, and they say, hey, I'm going through something, and it's something similar to what you went through, or I heard about it, and I know it's probably not fun to talk about, or you may not want to talk about it. I'm sorry to bring it up. And I stop them really early, and I say, hey, it's obviously not a topic I bring up at birthday parties. It's not a fun thing to talk about. But if my fire can offer you a drink of water during yours, then there's a purpose to mine. There's a reason I went through this. It's not an accident that you're here around me. It's not an accident that you're in my vicinity while you're going through this even. It's on purpose. There's a reason for this. Let's talk about it. Just like when I'm at school and some of the kids that I'm talking to, and I'm talking to them about 6 months in the future, 2 years in the future, 16 years in the future, and they're worried about tomorrow. And they're like, you're asking me things about 6 months from now when I graduate, and I don't even know if I'm gonna, where I'm gonna live tomorrow. When I break down that door with them and say, no, I understand what you're talking about. I know what you're feeling. Let's talk about it. Let's break that down. Then my fire wasn't on purpose. It was on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't something random. There's a purpose to it. So let me end with something, a little bit of a fun fact. I'm such a fun fact guy. I love fun facts. Because the inspiration for this message was not actually Elisha at all, okay? Elisha and the servant was the best imagery that I could give you about being surrounded. It was the best embodiment of an actual army surrounding you and feeling life and death. But here's where it actually came from. I was reading in John, and Jesus is the inspiration for this. In John chapter 2, and we'll start at the beginning, but I know you know this story because this is like everyone's favorite Jesus story. This is when he turns the water into wine. Like even non-Christians know this one. This one's good. And he says in chapter 2, verse 1, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. And Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. It's good to know people. Jesus' mom's invited to a wedding. They're like, bring Jesus and the disciples. Nailed it. Boom. He's there. We skip on down and we learn they run out of wine. Jesus tells them to bring what they have, some jars of water. He changes it into wine. They draw it, they taste it, and they're like, wow, this is like the best wine ever. I can't believe you waited so long to bring this wine out. People might not even taste it now. Best wine, right? We skip down to verse 11. And it says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. And his disciples believed him. Now, I love that account. It's great. The order's been there for centuries, and I just noticed it like a month ago, just listening to the Bible audio through my car with the weird music behind it. Jesus' mom was invited to a wedding. He and his disciples were invited too. He performs his very first miraculous sign. Then his disciples believed in him. Did you catch it that time? Jesus' disciples were there the entire time. Jesus was surrounded by people way before the cross, way before any crisis, way before he did miraculous signs even. He had surrounded himself with his disciples. He didn't start just on his own, start doing the miraculous signs and then take the first 12 off the first couple rows and be like, you guys are the best fans. Let's take the show on the road. Yeah. That's not what happened. Before anything started, he surrounded himself with the 12, and they prayed together, and they went and did life together. They did ministry together. Even when the crowds went away, the 12 was there. And then we get to the crisis that he went through. The servant didn't wake up, surrounded in the city, and then have to go find Elisha. He was already with Elisha. We have to surround ourselves with people for the good times and the bad. It's not just for when crisis hits that we reach out to everyone that we can to help pull us up. And it's not just when the hot times are good and we want to be around people then. We're made for companionship and relationship through both of that. It's going through that good and the bad is what bonds us together in that. That's why God placed those people around us in those times, in those strategic times. We just have to accept it and let them in. So let's take a chance to respond. Because maybe you're in a spot where you realize you're not surrounded by God at all. God's love, it's already there around you. And you just haven't opened your eyes yet to see it. Maybe this is that time you take that moment and you go, I do want to be saved. I do need God's love. I realize I'm a sinner. Because Romans makes it super easy to understand. Breaks it down. It says if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, believe that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. Like it's 1, 2, and 3. Nothing complicated about that. Your next steps from there might have some complications with that. Your next steps from there may be tougher. But as far as just accepting the gift of Christ, super easy. They don't make it a 10-step thing. Maybe you've accepted Christ, but you have not surrounded yourself with anyone. Tavis talked earlier that he tried to do it on his own for a while and finally reached out. And when he reached out, the floodgates opened. So maybe your step today is to take the plunge, join a small group at Overflow. And I know what you're thinking. This dude did not just get up here and preach a sermon that was really a commercial for small groups. And spoiler alert, he did. He did. But also though, let me open your eyes to another option that you may not have thought about. Something that was around you the whole time that you're like, man, like a small group looks cool and all, and it looks fun and all, but like really, if we're being honest, you already have a small group. You've got a group of friends that you surround yourself with. Most of you go to Overflow. You already vent to each other. You already pour into each other. Take this time over the next little bit and just elect a leader amongst yourself and make it an official Overflow group, because then you can take that, use it as an excuse to meet together like 2 to 4 times a month and prioritize that time to do life together. Because that's important. Meeting together, sometimes when we meet as a small group, we don't get much done. We just eat. They tell me about how bad I'm doing Ella's hair, and we go on. But it's that time together, though, that when good things do happen or when bad things do happen, we're there. We know. They know where to reach out to. That surrounding of people is already set up that when the low times hit, we've already got that group text started. So maybe that's where you're at. So we're going to stand. We're going to sing a little bit more. I'm going to pray. But before we pray, while we're standing, I want you to go ahead and stand up. Yeah. I want you to look at your neighbor one more time. I want you to look at him. I want you to give him the title of my message one more time. But this time, do it in the spirit of Elisha. Do it in the calm and reassurance and confidence that there's more of us than there are of them. Look at your neighbor and go, we're surrounded. God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for this opportunity to learn something. I thank you for this opportunity that I could give something that was so important to me, to others. I hope that if you're working in somebody right now,